Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Engini Room. I'm your host, Carmel. Thanks so much for joining me today. So, today's guest has had a career that most people couldn't sum up in one job title. He spent over 2 decades building and fixing enterprise technology, which is why I wanted to invite him on. So, let's get started. We have Eran as our guest here. We're really happy to have you on this episode. I know that you and one of our co-founders go way back. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Yeah,
Thank you very much for having me.
great. So before we get into everything, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Eran Rozenfeld. I'm based in Florida, and
Hmm.
I'm working with tech initiatives for the last 25 years, from hardware to software to integration between them. And nowadays, of course, with the data and AI, which everyone wants to make sure that they are implementing. But let's talk about how you implement it the right way today.
Yes, sounds good. So clearly you've been building enterprise technology for over 2 decades. You have a lot of experience, which is why we wanted to have you come on here and give your perspective. So I want to start somewhere that I think really defines how you see everything else. So before Priority and before you were at Matrix, you helped build Infobase from the ground up, right? Over 9 years, you guys acquired over 3,000 users, which is really impressive. And then at some point, you guys sold it. That's a whole chapter of your career. So, how does that founder experience shape the way you walk into a company today when they tell you that they're ready for AI? Because AI sounds good, right? But are people really ready for it from your perspective?
Absolutely. So thank you for that. When you act as a founder and you build something from the ground up, in this case, Infobase that dealt with implementing information systems, ERPs and CRM, and customizing them
Hmm.
and configuring them the right way, way before the AI was popular as today. You get to know different industries. You get to know different sizes of businesses, from small and large and everything between. And it gets you the idea and understanding of more of a holistic way to look at the business, and understand that if you want to bring in technology, whatever it may be, because in the last 25 years we have a lot. We moved from on-premise to a cloud, and
Hmm.
cybersecurity kicked in a very impressive and intense way. So now we're talking about AI and so on. So it gives you the perspective to look at all the different departments, then division, and then understand what is needed in order to make sure that the business is still stable. It's moving forward, right?
Hmm.
But with cautiously, but being stable, even when you introduce new technologies that are very fast moving, like AI.
Yeah, that's a great response. I think it's great. And you've also felt like and understood the cost of systems that don't work. And then obviously you've helped and tried to fix those systems at scale. And I think this makes your next step really interesting because after Priority acquired Infobase, they trusted you to build their US presence from scratch with no existing playbook. And 4 years later, you guys hit 800% in growth, which is very impressive given the project and the circumstances. So I'd love to understand what that journey actually looked like. What did selling enterprise software to American companies teach you that you maybe couldn't have learned elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a smooth transition, from owning my own business that dealt a lot with a
Hmm.
software called Priority, which is an ERP software that again touches every little area at the business, from accounting and finance and inventory and manufacturing. And building from the ground up again, the presence for Priority software in the US was exciting. All of a sudden, you see different market, so you have to
Hmm.
adjust. When you get
Yeah.
to a different market, with different cultures, sometimes different players in this market, it's a very saturated and very mature market. So all of a sudden, you need to be very creative. You need to find
Mm.
what are the areas, what are the niche, what are the unique values that you can bring to the market in order to shine and in order to gain trust from almost from scratch,
Hmm.
because nobody knows you, right? It's almost like to build the startups with a name that nobody knows you, right? Even
Hmm.
though you have like 25 years of experience with the product and so on, but you're coming for a different market and so on. So that was very exciting, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot about different businesses, and now different culture, and even different DNAs of businesses. And when you have different DNAs, this is where you need to adjust even more the approach. Is this
Hmm.
an organization that is very concerned about privacy of data? This is an organization that is very concerned about changes. So how do you not just implement and bring some new features and new technology into the business, but also how do you take care of the change management? How do you make sure that you are addressing, working with managers and with employees in order to not just to implement something, but to make sure that the adoption will be a successful one. So that's another piece of experience that you gain coming to a new market, coming to a new type of customers.
And I'm sure you learned about, what these companies are looking for in terms of product market fit as well, which is really important when you're coming into a new market as a new player. And you probably also learned about how these companies make decisions from the inside as well, which puts you in a unique position to answer something that comes up quite frequently on this show. So, obviously, you've been inside hundreds of ERP environments. You know what these systems look like. Right now, there are thousands of AI startups promising that their agents can sit on top of any ERP and just work. And from everything you've actually seen inside these companies, is this real or is it still mostly a pitch? Is it a promise that they can't really deliver on? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. We see every other day, we see five more new so-called promising AI solutions, companies and startup and so on. You don't need to be
Hmm.
a genius to understand that eventually only the real customers with a real value will stick around. And eventually you'll see, some major platforms, right? And few different startups or companies with technologies that is unique. At the end of the day, you'll find those companies with some unique approach to the market stick around, grow. You wanna pay attention to those. I would say that today it is very important to understand that AI projects are still in experimentation mode. It
Hmm.
is not there fully stable. And if you want to learn more about it, look at the big companies. Don't just look at the small companies. Look at the big companies. Look at the banks. Look at the financial institutions. Look at the big manufacturers, big retailers, consumer packaging goods and so on, and follow what they do. How do they bring this digital transformation, right, into their businesses? Because they are looking at things in a holistic way. They can experiment, but they want to be more cautious about experimentation, and definitely when they move something to production. So this is the phase that we are at right now, and
Hmm.
we might dive into that a bit more in some of your next question, but I would recommend, right, to carefully build strategy. How do I bring AI into my organization and go and move in small steps, gain the trust inside the company, gain wins, right? And move forward to
Hmm.
the next one.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. That makes sense, right? The companies need to be able to deliver on their promises, but it's not always easy because obviously things get complicated once you get past the demo stage and you get into real world implementation. And what do you think this real world implementation looks like when you like deconstruct the legacy tech stacks at some of these organizations? What needs to be in place for AI to work with these systems?
That's an amazing question, and I think this is the heart of what should be the approach to AI projects right now. And I will share
Hmm.
with you the following. And what I do right now, I'm working with all sizes of businesses, but definitely few large businesses. So here is the methodology that I believe that works. Working for us, that I believe that works. So the first thing you want to do, right? You want to approach and do some assessment, make some assessment. Go to whatever department, division, or the entire company, depend on the size, and map the different processes over there. When you're mapping the different processes, the operational processes, the financial one, the marketing one, the manufacturing one, you want to build a map and almost like a quadrant where you can place different use cases that AI
Hmm.
can bring an ROI, a return of investment. You have to make sure that it brings something to the table. It could bring higher revenue, could bring reduction of cost, could bring some innovation. and put
Mhm.
you in front of your competitors and so on. So when you build this map, you can then decide, all right, what are the fast achiever use cases that I can tackle with AI projects, right? And the one that will cost me maybe less, that will be short time to implement and so on, and build a plan that you can implement them, right, one by one in a short period of time. You want to take like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, take a use case and make
Mhm.
sure that you implement it and the adoption within the company is good. And of course, that it comes with some other thing that you have to look at. You have to look at governance. All of a sudden, you're opening your doors
Mhm.
to information that might come from the outside world and so on. You have to do it properly with the right companies, with the right consultants. Make sure that you have a data governance in place. There are some other things that you want to look at. If you want the AI project to work, if you want the AI use cases and development to work, you really need to make sure that you get the right data and the data is
Mhm.
organized the right way. Think about it. The AI is a new buzzword that everyone is using right now, but it's here for decades. Right now, we have a better computing for power, so we can implement it quickly. But if the data is not organized,
Mhm.
if you can see only parts of the data, some tables from database X or Y, but you cannot see audio files and you cannot see emails, or you cannot see other attachment and so on, and analyze all of it together and make sure that the AI get the approach over there. How can you expect anyone to research within your data if that, even if it's a person, look at it as a person, doesn't have the access to all of the data? So organizing the data, modernizing the data
Mhm.
platforms, and making sure that the AI have a quick access now, right? That's the key. Governance, that's another key. Mapping, picking the use cases that can work, it's another key. And lastly, I will share today, it's not just the technology. You need to bring or to make sure that your managers and employee are now becoming design thinkers. It's not about a process A that I am familiar with for the last 10 years, and then I want to keep it the
Yeah.
same, but just make it faster here and faster there. No, you want to look at the entire process and ask yourself, is that the right process? Or maybe I want to redesign the entire thing and let
Mm.
AI help me now, right, to come to better achievements, better ROI, as we discussed before.
So you have so many great insights. I'm sure people will definitely take everything you said into consideration. And like you said, at some point the internal data, the infrastructure gets exposed in the process, right? Especially if an organization is not ready for AI and not ready to implement it and they don't have the right guardrails in place. So let's shift gears for a second. I know you were also at Drives, right? And you were operating software that touched chargers across a network of thousands of drivers in 27 countries all at the same time. So that's obviously very different from a typical SaaS platform. So what did that experience teach you in terms of, designing systems that actually hold up in the real world? Especially when things don't go as planned in terms of the, e-mobility industry and just in general.
Absolutely. So Drives, was a great experience all of a sudden dealing with the charging infrastructure,
Yeah.
software that integrate with
Hmm.
hardware like the chargers, and looking and helping this, revolution of e-mobility and energy that we see around the world right now. It also was a great experience to work with the, super emerging and sensitive market, because that market is, if you remember, starting from governments like Norway that are pushing people to buy to go full electric, to
Hmm.
companies to areas like the Far East that are pushing and building charging infrastructure, to the U.S. that created a bipartisan bill to support that, and all of a sudden, change of president and governance, changing things, etc. So it gets you the experience to be in a volatile market, and and over there, this is exactly where you want to adjust, and you want to be agile, you want to be flexible. And
Hmm.
I think it's aligned with what we discussed before, because everything that you do right now, even with AI, right, changes on almost like a daily basis. If you take
Yeah.
the leading tool right now, right, the ChatGPT, the OpenAI, or the Anthropic, or
Hmm.
Gemini by Google, and Copilot, you
Yep.
see that every day or every week, all of a sudden one is better than the other, one is trending more than better than the other, etc. It just showed you that you want to stick with the basics. Stick with the
Hmm.
basics, prepare right, build your infrastructure right, look at the data, look at the governance, and be prepared to adjust the technology accordingly. But you have your basics, you have your infrastructure in place. So that's how things are connected, even with technology or market is changing a lot.
Like you said, I think, some people think AI is magic, and maybe it is, but if you don't have the right base in place, it's going to be very difficult to implement, especially at scale. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that right now, right? There have been
Correct.
so many issues. Also, good things have happened, but like we've seen all these stories in the news with AI maybe not being implemented in the right way and
Right.
hallucinating and making mistakes that I'm sure were unexpected. So I think your response is really valid. And what I really find fascinating about your path is that most people who really go deep into the ERP tech space, they usually stay there. But, your path is unusual. And I'm curious, what drew you toward the e-mobility space? And did that change how you think about data and operations? Besides, I guess, what you just said right now, is there anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that my path is might be a little different than others, but that's
Hmm.
because I really I am a technology freak or
Hmm.
technology, someone that really like to see different things that are happening. And of course, that information systems like ERPs and CRM are very wide market. It's very wide range, with a lot of things that are happening. But I think that I was attracted, to look at other things and understand different industries in this world that are happening, like the e-mobility, for example, or like the world
Hmm.
of medical devices and other things that I touched during my last 20 years of experience, and including what I'm doing right now, which is Matrix, which is a large $2.5 billion system integrator that touches a lot of technology services, almost any technology service out there,
Hmm.
leading here in the US, the data and AI. It's exciting. It's exciting because you get to touch the newest thing that are out there, and you get to meet those startups, those technology, this innovation that is coming. And this is something that attracts me a lot. So then I'm excited and I'm grateful to be in a position
Hmm.
where I can move a little bit and still continue deal and support customers with different technologies.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned now you're at Matrix and you're essentially the person that companies call when they want to figure out what AI means for them, right? And there's something that keeps coming up in the way that you talk about your work there, which is responsible AI. And I want to understand what that really means. So, it means different things to different people. People have a lot of different opinions about it. So, from your perspective, what does responsible AI actually look like when it's being done well versus when it's maybe not being done as well in
Absolutely.
practice?
I think that any stakeholder, a manager that is leading, the adoption of AI within a company need to think about the basic, need to think about what would I have done if I wanted to build a new business. I would probably
Hmm.
go to some consultants, right? I would probably go
Yeah.
to a CPA to learn, all right, where do I need to register my company and how to do it right? Or to an insurance consultant, what type of insurance that I need to, I want to make sure that I'm safe, or how do I recruit people with some HR and so on. It is the same thing when you are implementing and bringing in new technology like AI, because there are a lot of things that you may be not aware of. So if you
Hmm.
consider the idea that you might missing some information, that's all.
Hmm.
Work with the right professionals, work with the right people with experience, ask, learn, and maybe work with them as you are building new things into the company. Because I'll give you a couple examples. You working in an area, medical or health and so on. There is HIPAA regulation and,
Hmm.
GDPR in Europe and other personal private information by customers. Are you sure that you're handling the right way now that when you bring a new technology?
Hmm.
Yes, no. Should I implement some guardrails? Should I make sure that the governance is right? Should I make sure the cybersecurity tools are in place? There are a lot of unknown. So I would say that the basic here is to understand that there are a lot of unknowns out there, but there are people that are dealing with it more than 10 years. So just learn, consult, and make sure that you're building things the right way.
Yeah. No, that's like you said, there is a difference between, aspiring to do something, especially with AI, and then the reality that comes with actually doing and
Correct.
implementing these projects. And sometimes there's a gap, which I want to talk about in terms of the integration layer, right? I think that's something that you have a very specific perspective on as well, given your experience. So you've seen integration from both sides, implementing it across hundreds of companies and then scaling a platform that depended on it. So a lot of these big integration platforms promise to simplify the integration layer for enterprises. So where do you think those platforms have delivered, and what do you think is missing from the work that they're doing currently?
Yeah, absolutely. This is very important question because when you implement AI, you want to make sure that all of your data from the different sources are connected, right? And
Hmm.
actually communicated the right way, some of them one directional or bidirectional and so on. And all of a sudden you're talking about APIs and other connectivities and et cetera, real time, sometimes in not in real time and so on. It's very, very sensitive area that again
Hmm.
comes to find out, what are the platform really offering, but also test real time, test large amount of data and make sure that it's really working correctly. We do integration for the last 20 and 30 years, with different protocols, but nowadays we have faster protocols, we have more advanced protocols. So don't just look at, company's website and what they offer, but also go
Hmm.
to a POC, a proof of concept, and build, the first use case, test small batches of data, test large batches of data, and make sure that the APIs or the connectivities and integrations are delivered as promised. That's a key thing to check when you go to a new project.
Yeah, great advice that I'm sure a lot of people need to hear. So I have two last quick questions for you.
Sure.
So the first one is, now that you have kind of been on the other side recently as an investor, right? I'm sure this changed your perspective a little bit on the AI market. So when an enterprise AI startup has pitched to you, what is one question that you think a lot of them can't answer and that tells you a little bit more about the market at the moment?
Yeah, just a quick insight over there. When you get to position where you ask yourself if to invest in companies and so on,
Hmm.
some of the key questions is what is the unique value that you bring, that the company brings to the market, and also what's the competition look like. This
Hmm.
is area where you want to pay a little bit more attention because to bring a unique value these days, it should be something that takes a lot of time to build, and the barrier for competitors will be significant. Because with the
Hmm.
days of AI and developing thing with Cursor and with other Claude Code and whatnot, you don't want to rely on something that was built over 24 hours. And this is for the sake of argument. You want to make sure
Yeah.
that there are some key technology over there that is very, very hard to duplicate and replicate and so on. So that's my advice.
It has to be the right market and the right product at the right time and something that brings a lot of value, right? Because
Correct.
especially the AI market is so saturated right now. Yeah, there's just so much going on. I love that. Okay, so the last one I have for you, so you've had experience that very few people have had. You've been like a founder, a market builder, investor, now you're like a strategy director. So obviously everyone says that AI will transform enterprise software. But coming from your experience, do you think that in terms of ERP, does ERP stay the same with this whole new wave of AI? Does it still stay the same system of record? What do you think will change in the future or even now?
So AI is changing a lot. We can see
Hmm.
that, right? But we can also see that AI, alone is not enough. AI can do
No.
sometimes 80% of the job, but then the 20%, all of a sudden you need to really sit down and think and, assess and make sure that it's right and so on. So the jobs are changing. So you need some more people that are design thinkers that can think about the process, that can test the process, to qualify the process, and so on. On the
Hmm.
ERP world, there's some regulations. This is your core business. This is the system of record, to your point, with all of your financial, etc. So it's
Hmm.
almost like, banking and financial institution systems. You're not changing that fast. You let the technology sink a little bit. You make sure that everything is stable and regulated. So I don't think that the ERP world will change immediately, right? Definitely, I see ERP tools bringing AI, such like any other technologies, bring AI to make sure that the processes are faster and so on.
Hmm.
But things that have been built for decades in terms of thinking, in terms of options, in terms of different industries and different verticals and unique features, it's not that easy to change with AI all of a sudden. So I see AI going into some of the processes, helping make things faster, but I see the main brain of ERP stayed there and just uses AI to get better, but it's
Hmm.
not going to replace it anytime soon. That's what I think.
Who knows what'll happen in the future, but for now, I think, like you said, the base needs to be accurate, and the infrastructure needs to be
Correct.
good, and that comes down to the ERP ultimately. So, any last words before we end the episode?
I want to thank you, Carmel, for this interview, and this, session was great. It's always great to meet and to talk about those topics that I love. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. And for everyone watching, stay tuned. There will be more episodes. All right. Bye, guys. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode. And if you want to learn more about AI solutions and implementation, visit our website at ingenie.ai. See you guys on the next one.